Wait a second for Instagram here. Always waiting on Instagram. And maybe some more people will pop up in here as well. All right. So that is live, and we are live. Hello, everybody. My name is JJ Hardy with Victory Leadership Coaching, and I thank you for taking the time to watch this today. This is actually a free training, and this training today is on effective communication. I really hope this is something that resonates with you, because it's a real problem with new managers, and it's a part of my training course that I provide. Without further ado, I'm going to do a formal presentation instead of just having a video of me talking this time. All right, I hope y'all can see that, and please put questions in there, but I'll address the questions at the end of my presentation. All right, so effective communication. My name is JJ Hardy. I'm retired from the U.S. Army, and I'm the owner of Victory Leadership Coaching. And so I have a really strong why for the reason I became a leadership coach specifically. I noticed after retiring from the military that there was a huge gap in training, and by the way, a huge mental health crisis where people feel like they're stranded on an island out in the civilian workforce. And it's because they don't train their new managers, which is not something that I'm used to specifically. As a former active duty service member, it's something that is a part of regular progression. Before you take a leadership position, you have to take leadership training. And as you progress through the ranks, you take more in-depth leadership training. Well, that doesn't happen necessarily in the civilian workforce, especially for small to medium-sized growing businesses. Construction, all the trades, they just don't place an emphasis on this. And I think that's a really big missed opportunity. However, I have some services here that can help kind of combat that. But I'm not going to keep on talking about that here, because I'm going to talk about that at the end. So here's the agenda for the presentation for this free training today on effective communication. So who am I? I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to spend, since I've already talked a little bit, I'm not going to talk too much more about me. I'm going to talk about leadership, mental health and communication, talked about active listening, assertive communication, active, constructive responding, praise, and why victory, which is why Victory Leadership Coaching. So who am I? This is an awfully busy slide, ladies and gentlemen, but really this is just to show me and my accomplishments and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I've already given a little bit of insight to that, but I am a retired U.S. Army warrant officer, and I love what I do in my Victory Leadership Coaching business. But I do podcasting. I have two podcasts that I publish on a regular basis. One is Victory Leaders Lounge, and I have a new one that I started with Derek Brown, LCSW. He's a mental health therapist, and that's called Warrior Leadership. I've published a book, incidentally. It's right here, and it's a little pocket guide that you can put in your portfolio, or you can it's portfolio or in your glove compartment, whatever the case may be. And there's a link to that at the end on my link tree. I'm a servant leader, and I have a family. So that's an old picture right there, but that's me in uniform, because I wanted to put one of me in uniform. Probably pretty cheesy, but I'm married to my wife. We just had our 18-year wedding anniversary, and I have a daughter who's almost 18. She's 17 years old right now, and my son is 14 now. So that's an old picture of them. It's actually on the dock over at Pearl Harbor as we're getting ready to load helicopters onto a ship, which thought you might think that was cool. I always look back at that and think that was cool that I did that on Pearl Harbor. So what is leadership? First of all, just because people say that they're in a leadership position, that does not make them a leader. A leader is so much more than that. I like this quote by General Douglas MacArthur. because it really kind of exemplifies what a leader is. A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. How powerful is that? And when you look at that quote and you look at what a leader is, it is somebody who places the needs and the welfare of others before their own. And when you place the needs and the welfare of others before your own, you're serving a higher cause because you're taking care of people. And that is really what a leader is, ladies and gentlemen. Mental health and communication. So I put a couple things up on here. Leadership has the ability to solve all problems. The most difficult thing to do is communicate. Don't make your employees feel like they're on an island. So there's a crisis out there in the workforce, and that's that people are turning to alcohol and opioid addiction that eventually can lead to suicide. And that's not just in the construction, or that's not just in the military. That's also in a lot of other businesses. And oftentimes that happens, and I can't 100% say, obviously, I'm just following statistics here, but I feel like it's because people are not treated well. A lot of times when people leave a job, they don't leave the people or the work, they leave the managers that they're working for. And when you think of it like that, what happens if you're struggling to pay the bills? You're struggling to pay the bills, and you're working in a job. You don't know what the end looks like if you were to jump ship from that job and go to another job. Well, doing that could mean that you're broke for a little while. And what happens if you can't afford that? Don't you think that messes with your mind a little bit? Well, people, let's practice some servant leadership here and see if we can solve that problem. And today I'm just going to give you one tool through the use of communication to see if we can combat that together. All right. So we'll start off with just how you listen to another person and respond to them in the immediate, just in a conversation. Stephen Covey said something amazing. He wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he said, seek to understand and then to be understood. And what that means is that, yeah, you have a lot of thoughts and opinions that are super important, but you got to understand where somebody's coming from. You got to meet them where they are when you're having a conversation with them, or even working with them, or whatever the case that may be, because, it's not really about you once you become a manager anymore. It is if you just want to stay a manager and have that classification. But if you want to be considered a leader, as I said earlier, you have to consider the needs and the welfare of others before your own. So when it comes to active listening, a lot of people hear what's being said, but they don't actually hear what's being said. Oftentimes there's that thought halfway through when somebody else is saying something, when you're having a conversation with them. And immediately when that person is done saying what they have to say, you respond with that. Let me give you an example of that. Somebody's talking to you and they're talking about how they're having difficulty with their spouse and how that is affecting their ability to show up to work on time. And maybe their child is sick, and the difficulty with their spouse and having a sick child, they really just need to make sure they have that extra time. And then you respond with, well, your work numbers are low. Well, does that have anything to do with their spouse or their child or addressing their need? I don't think it does. As a matter of fact, it doesn't. And when you think about it that way, you weren't listening. You were hearing them, but you weren't listening. And if you were listening and you responded that way, shame on you. It's a selfish way to have a conversation. So that is active listening with a good response. We're going to talk more about how you respond later on. Assertive communication. So That is communicating clearly and with respect and avoiding aggressive communication. So when I think of assertive communication, there's a fine line. So there's a dichotomy, there's balance between communicating clearly and with respect and aggressive communication. So you can definitely articulate yourself in a way that can be constructive, right? Well, where you are giving feedback when somebody needs to improve on something or whatever the case may be without getting aggressive. Clear and concise communication is a little bit different than that. It's being direct and to the point. One thing that a lot of people don't understand when they're giving instructions to people or they're teaching a class or maybe even writing an email is that, especially in today's economy, the one thing that you need to understand is that people don't have a huge attention span. They can listen to things for a little bit. But if you overtalk or you over explain or whatever the case may be, you can lose their attention. And when you lose their attention, you can see it. So if you pay attention to the conversation and you look at somebody's eyes as you're saying things, you can see when they blank out and they're no longer listening. Well, you avoid that by being direct and to the point. And so that's saying things in the least amount of time possible, but giving the most detail in that short amount of time. And that is clear and concise communication, people. And so if you can balance the dichotomy of communicating clearly and concisely and with respect and aggressive communication, which sometimes adds a little bit of anger to that, but we'll talk more about aggressive communication here in a second. Then you're communicating in a way that's going to get through to people and it's going to resonate with them. They're going to take something away from that instead of just blanking out and not really hearing what you said. All right. I'm going to have to take a quick drink of coffee here because this one's going to take a minute. All right, people, energized, ready to go. Lock, cock, and ready to rock. Active, constructive responding. Respond to others in a way that will build strong relationships. What does that mean? Well, if you have the ability to make your screen a little bit bigger, this would be the time to do it, because I would like you to look at the quad chart that I decided to place up here on this slide. So active and constructive versus passive and destructive. When you think of active constructive responding, it's responding in a way that makes people feel like they're a part of the conversation. This is part of the active listening that I was talking about earlier, where you respond to what people are actually saying, and you're responding you're responding in a way that addresses any issues they may be having, whatever the case may be, but you're showing interest in what that person had to say. So let's go to the complete opposite side of that, where we'll say on this quad chart, it's passive destructive. It says ignoring the event, conversation never starts, person feeling confused, guilty, or disappointed. Well, if you just interrupt somebody in the middle of a conversation and you go off talking about something else, that is the opposite of making somebody feel validated. When people all need validation. I mean, if you take a deep look at yourself, even you need validation. You can say all day long that I don't care what other people think, I'm going to be me, but that's not really true. At some point, you're needing somebody to approve of something that you do. And so seeking that validation is a natural human thing, and just keep that in mind. You can be a little bit passive, but that's still pretty destructive. And when you think of passive listening or passive responding. While somebody is talking to you, and this goes back to active listening, and you have terrible body language. Maybe your arms are crossed. Maybe you're looking around the room. Maybe you're writing and you didn't tell them that you'd be taking notes, and you just start writing something down in the middle of them talking. Or maybe, you just don't show any interest at all. Maybe you wave at somebody else, or whatever the case may be. That is not a great way to engage in a conversation. And the reason that it's not a great way to engage is because it doesn't make the person feel like they're being listened to. Now, let's look at an active, destructive version of a similar thing. What if you interrupt the conversation and you start saying things that completely cut a person down? Well, I don't even think I need to go into that. If they start cutting you down and they weren't really listening to what you had to say, then are you really going to carry on another conversation with them after something like that? And if you do, are you really going to give them your true opinions and thoughts and all of that stuff? Well, consider these things when you're dealing with employees, because if you are not actively in every conversation that you have with them, or maybe you promise them something that you would help them with and you don't actually end up helping them. You say you're going to help, but you walk away and then it never gets followed up on. That's still a form of passive listening. And by the way, people feel betrayed. And I had a whole video last night that you can watch that I did with Derek about that. But people don't want to just go through the motions, and they already think that at every job they go to, that managers are just going to be horrible. And so why would you let that be you if you know that that's already the tone that's in every workplace? When somebody starts a new job and they're going to be working for you, you want them to know they're going to be heard, understood, acknowledged, cared for, the whole 9 yards. And if you're not that type of person, then you should consider your interest in a management role, to be quite honest with you, or maybe a business ownership role where you have employees, because it takes that level of listening and care and understanding in order to have a workforce underneath your charge that cares back for you. Because if you invest in them, they're going to invest back in you. That's just the way it works. All right. I felt like I over talked a little bit on that one, but I'm going to keep moving forward. And never underestimate. Oh my gosh, I had like a puberty moment there. Never underestimate the value of praise. Praising an employee for something that they did makes them feel valued. It lets them know that they're doing a good job. It lets them know that they can keep doing things the way they're doing things, and that you appreciate them, and the whole 9 yards. And I put the little blurb here on the screen that praising gives employees a sense of accomplishment that provides individual accountability and promotes a sense of ownership. Well, when people already feel appreciated in the job, they're going to care more about what they do. That's the accountability piece. But then they're going to make sure they are always doing it right, and they're probably going to hold other people accountable as well. And that's another thing, which is a sense of ownership. Ownership is taking responsibility for everything within your sphere of influence. If you can bring it full circle and get all of your employees doing that same thing, what effect would that have on your team or in your business? I think you would find that it turns things around and makes things pretty amazing. So we'll go why victory here, but I'm going to go back up a slide because I don't want you to get distracted with my services and stuff, because I have something very important to say. You can turn this into there's more than just active listening and effective communication and all of that. You know, one thing as far as praise is concerned, your employees, they need to know how well they're doing. That's not just praise. It's also performance reviews and counselings and stuff like that. I highly, 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 highly recommend that you create a system where monthly, quarterly, annually, all of those things, you set up private, scheduled, regular calls, or if you're virtual or in person, closed door conversations with each one of your people. And if if you have managers working for you, then maybe you're just having those meetings with your managers, and then they'll do it with their employees. But to talk about their performance and the level of support that they're getting in the workplace. It's very, very important that you have these regular conversations. People need validation. Like I said before, they need praise, but they also need to know where they stand. And when we talk about counseling and performance reviews, just having it can be a 10-minute check-in, 20-minute check-in to say, how are you doing and what support can I provide for you? And also, how well am I doing? And is there anything better that I can be doing in my role while I'm supporting you and everybody else? And is there anything that you've noticed that I could be doing better? When you have these conversations and you're helping them achieve their goals in the workplace and maybe even some of their outside of the workplace goals, you create another level of influence with every single one of your people. And that influence is what drives them to want to do the things that you ask them to do. And by the way, not just do them, but exceed expectations and go above and beyond. Consider that. And don't lead from your office. Be that person that walks around, if you're in a physical workplace, that walks around and checks in with your people and asks them maybe daily or at least every few days or a week, just asking them how they're doing, how their mom's doing, dog, squirrel, goldfish, whatever. Take the conversation outside of work, but then before you leave and walk away from them, ask us if there's anything you can do to support them. Not going to beat a dead horse on that, but that's also a completely different class that I offer. But I just wanted to make sure that I touched on it here at the end, because it's important enough for me to add that, because if you don't do that, you're not doing everything you can for your people. So why victory? Why victory leadership coaching? Well, I truly believe that leaders without education create bad habits. And when people do not have a support system, they cannot be the very best at what they're doing. The difference between a manager and a leader is that a manager focuses on tasks and statistics, and leaders fully understand how to take care of the employees and use the servant leadership principles to drive them to success and show them that they're cared for. Because once you get promoted to a manager, it's no longer about you, it's about them. And though you may have people working under your charge, they, technically speaking, you work for them because you're supporting them in their roles and you're making sure they have everything they need to do their job. And if you don't think of the management job that way, then it's going to be very difficult for you to focus on the people, which, by the way, a business is nothing more than a group of people that come together to do a job. So you have to focus on the people. If you focus on the people, the statistics will grow. Everything will be hunky-dory. All right. So these are the things that I provide. I do have self-led training. It's a 5-module course, and you can take it via my app, or you can buy it and take it online. I also have a group training course I bring people into a community outside of social media, and I have weekly check-ins with them, and it's 6 weeks long. And I'm going to start cohorts here very shortly. And if you want to hear about that, you gotta reach out to me. But that's specifically designed to make sure that those managers have the training they need to start implementing the leadership principles. And then we have conversation every week to discuss what they learned so that they can implement those things. Moving right along. I also have specified training. So what training does your company need? Well, we can have a conversation about that. I have so many classes already prepared, and they're all about servant leadership, communication. There are some mental health things that I can teach as well in the cognitive behavioral therapy realm, but all kinds of stuff, how to build teams, all of those things. And I can't go into everything because that would just take too long. I have pre-built classes already, but I also offer coaching, and that's one-on-one, and I can do that in groups as well. If there's a team that you have that has a specific outcome that they need to accomplish. Also, I do speaking engagements. So if you need me to talk about, how servant leadership can improve the mental health crisis in your workplace, then I'd be happy to do that. Or if there's a subject that you need in the leadership realm to be discussed with your people, I can get up and talk about that too. I put this blurb at the bottom because I truly believe it. The workplace relies on servant leaders to solve the employee retention and mental health crisis. I truly, truly believe that. And by the way, the military focuses on that, and all of their statistics, they revolve around the care of the people in each organization, because they don't want more suicide. They don't want more alcoholism. They don't want more opioid addiction. That's something that I would meet with my people on a regular basis when I was still on active duty to talk about. And I want to help you guys understand how to do that as well, so that you can do that in your organizations. All right. So I am going to go to the next slide, which, by the way, that QR code, it says Linktree right there, but that'll take you to my website. It'll take you to all my social media content. It'll take you to my podcast. And if you're interested in purchasing my book, there's a link on that Linktree that will take you to Amazon so you can purchase my book as well. And I'm going to leave this up and see if anybody has questions. Oh, hi, Jessica. So she said, don't expect your team to come to you for support. You should always be reaching out to your teams. And I'm going to put this up here. But you should always be going to your teams to make sure that, hi, Jessica. You should always be going to your teams to make sure you're helping them with what they need and asking the simple question, is there anything I can do to support you? Regularly. Don't be afraid to do that. I have a whole other presentation on difficult conversations, and conversations are difficult because people are afraid of what somebody else is going to say. But when you ask somebody what kind of support they need and you're not willing to support them, that's also a difficult conversation. Get in the mind frame that you're there to serve, and that's going to be a lot easier. I don't really have anything else. I'm going to give it about another 2 or 3 minutes for questions to roll in. I am on Instagram as well. Again, I want to point out, let me take this comment down so you guys can have my contact information is there. And by the way, that says 757-325-5910 for the phone number, because I have my screen shared. But yeah, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you, see what kind of needs I can help your organization with. That's what I'm on this earth to do right now, is I'm here to support y'all. Jessica said, as a manager, I have always asked of my team, what is working? What isn't? That's a great question, but don't just ask them what's working for them. Ask them what you can be doing to support them better as well. Make sure you're bringing that question full circle, and don't just talk about their performance and their job. Ask how you can support them and the rest of the team on a regular basis as well. Oh, that's what you meant. Haha. Okay. You and I are always on the same sheet of music anyway. You know that. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone. I really do. Thank you for tuning in, both on the webinar itself and if you're listening on any of the live streams. Make sure that you're asking questions, sharing this with your team if it resonated with you, commenting below, again, keeping the conversation going, all of that sort of stuff. This is a very important topic. Effective communication plagues a lot of organizations because they just don't know how to do it. And it's not because they don't try, it's just they don't have education. This is where I sign off. I'm going to give you all the rest of your Saturday back, but enjoy your weekend and keep kicking butt out there in each one of your industries. Take care. You're welcome.